Welcome to Happy Times and Places, which is a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, have asked a friend to choose a Doctor Who story and secretly select their favourite things about each episode. I then watch the episodes, drop in some commentary facts, and try to guess what those favourite things are.
Hi, Toby. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast. I am very honoured to be here talking about one of my favourite stories of all time. When Toby first emailed me, the first thought came to my mind was, I want to do the Romans, and I was so happy no one had done it yet. For episode 1, I have chosen a scene, and for episodes 2, 3, and 4, I have chosen dialogue. And then for my fifth and final moment, I'm talking about the entire story as a whole, and I've chosen one particular scene, which is my absolute favourite part of the entire story. So good luck, Toby.
Welcome back, everybody, to Happy Times and Places with me, Toby Hadoke, and the first voice you heard after the music subsided was Josh Snares, YouTuber. I still feel like when I say YouTuber, it's like hearing some Victorian fusspot of old going, the Beatles, or and what is this pop music of which you speak? Which is odd because I've spent many a time watching excellent Doctor Who related YouTube videos by Josh, by Gavin Rymel, and the Dalek Collectives, and all sorts of other people. There's lots of great Doctor Who stuff out there, and Josh is one of the very first who caught my attention, and the very great pleasure of occasionally corresponding. And what a lovely person, and what an enthusiast, and so very nice to be able to be in the orbit of the younger generation who don't sort of see me as some sort of has-been on the shelf. And actually, isn't it a joy that there's a high percentage of people who are very young who like this old black and white stuff. Now, yeah, obviously this black and white stuff was before I was born as well, but it wasn't that long ago, and I got used to it fairly on it, because black and white stuff, they don't even show black and white films on terrestrial telly really anymore, do they? I remember getting furious with the top 10 TV sci-fi, which was a thing they did on Channel 4. They did lots of top 10 things at this point, and it was an excuse for a comedian, and you think, oh, they'll get a sci-fi a sci-fi sympathetic comedian. Oh no, Jimmy Carr. Okay, because he was the comedian they wanted to promote. That's how it works. I suspect if tomorrow they did a Talking Heads documentary about Doctor Who and they wanted 10 comedians on it, I wouldn't be on the list. Do you know what I mean? That's not how it's. Knowing about Doctor Who and loving Doctor Who is not important when it comes to choosing comedians for your thing. It's not even Anyway, let's not get into that. But why am I saying this? Because when they did the top 10 sci-fi, I was furious that Quatermass wasn't on it, and I mentioned this to a friend, and he said, "Oh yeah, I looked into that, and it's because they didn't want too much black and white on there." It's like, oh, but okay, so it's not the top 10 TV sci-fi. He said, "Well, what made you think it was official? Do you know what I mean? It's just a program. It's just I was like, yeah, but if you're going to do a program, you should do it properly." Which is why perhaps I've never really prospered in television. Anyway, I'm having a right old time doing these podcasts because you do what you want, and if people like it, they come, and enough of you have. So thank you for so doing. Let's get down and dirty in ancient Rome, which is a scary place to be, and see what the Doctor and co are getting up to independently of each other, which is part of the wheeze of the whole story. So we're on episode 4. Josh is going to choose a line, and I actually got the line last time, and a scene. So I'm slightly prescriptive in what I will be choosing. I ignored the rules in episode 2 and immediately regretted it, and then played by them in episode 3, got it right. So it's currently 2-1 to Josh. So I could statistically still win, but I've probably got about as much chance, seeing as the broad canvas that I'm having to look over, I've got as much chance as Ian and Barbara have of bumping in to the Doctor and Vicky in Nero's temple. So let's, in Nero's, in Rome. So let's press play in 3, 2, 1. Burn, baby, burn. It's a Latin inferno. It's episode 4 of The Romans, which, yes, as I say, was the first, well, one of the first 2 stories, because I did them together, The Rescues and The Romans, that I got to do a DVD commentary on for. At that time, it seemed like it might be, a one-off. Who knew? And actually, what a heady time that was, because I got up early to do the recording, got the train at 5 o'clock in the morning, went to the BBC to record the commentary with Ray Cusick, Christopher Barry, Barry Jackson, all no longer with us, William Russell. There he is. And then Mossate My Doctor Who scarf started at the West End that night. And then that night I went to bed, and the radio version of Mossate My Doctor Who scarf got announced as on the list for Sony nominees. So that was possibly the best day of my life. As ever, I failed to capitalise. I mean, I did try. I wrote to people and hawked the news about, but I failed to capitalise on any of that. Well, apart from, I suppose, the fact that I did enough on that commentary to still be doing them, and I'm very grateful. I love the fact that I've sat amongst a number of these people. Well, actually, not these people, only this one. Lovely William Russell, brilliant Ian Chesterton, because sadly, by the time we got to do the commentary, all of these other people were no longer with us. Derek Sidney, Derek Francis. Derek Francis, who steals the show. He definitely does as Nero. He has fun, but he's still very dangerous. I mean, the script helps him because he dispenses death so casually. But I like the way he doesn't necessarily sort of relish it. He does it with a sort of casual, he dispenses death with a sort of casual glibness that sometimes goes against the lines, which I rather like. It's actually a little bit more frightening. If you fail, you die. He does, he does quite matter-of-factly, which is in a way more frightening than, relishing it. He's not a sadist. He doesn't really feel it in a way. And then that's pretty grim. That poor soldier. And Jacqueline Hill's reaction is excellent. Look at her. She's such a good actress. And he, he's a bit, he's quite frightening there because he's so casual about it. So although it's a terribly funny performance and it's the show-stealing part and it's written brilliantly, it doesn't. I'd forgotten actually how dangerous this Rome is, because I think of the Romans as the farce. But they've used the advantage of telling the story at this bloody time in history, at this bloody place where life is cheap, and violence is meted out and used for entertainment and all sorts. Michael Peake, bless him. I double checked. He is the 3rd person to die from Doctor Who. He dies 2 years after this. 48. So I've just outlived him because I've just turned 49. It's terrifying, isn't it? So yes, it's Gene Conroy from the Dalek Invasion of Earth, then Jack Cunningham from the Reign of Terror, and then Michael Peake. At the order of actors from Doctor Who to die. Does anybody care for such information? Well, it's the kind of information I dispense. This is what you came here for, folks. And he's a lovely character. But again, I sort of think of him as quite a serious character in this. But he does have his comic moments. But yeah, he comes good here. He becomes the hero, and he's very distinctive looking. That bald head of his is, I think, very useful as an actor. And he's got a really interesting face, actually, because it can be. It's got a sort of gentleness about it, and a kind of it has a sort of benign gentleness about it. But you can see him also probably being able to play villains equally effectively as well with that physiognomy and certainly the bald head. And this is nice because it drips this in. I have my own reason for helping. He doesn't explain what that is, and they don't make a big deal of it. It gets a lovely close-up when it happens, but it lets that element speak for itself, that he is a Christian. And therefore, and that's, I think, quite thought-provoking, that at this time, that was a sort of shorthand for good guy, which, of course, gets much more, complicated. And I think ironically, and I feel sorry for people who are Christians now, because it's quite hard now to have Christians as a good guy, because I think of there's a desire now to to topple what people see as sort of untouchable institutions, and the church is always seen as because the church has had many, many, many problems over the years. But I am in sympathy with Christian commentators and friends of mine who go, it would be nice if a Christian in something did not turn out to be a pervert or a baddie or a liar or a hypocrite, because of course it's more dramatic if somebody who espouses Christianity is shown to be hypocritical, because that is more of a sort of the drama of what they espouse compared to the what they do. It makes for, that's the stuff of drama, and that's the stuff of contrast, and hypocrisy, and going against the morality that you preach and all that sort of thing. But I think sometimes it would almost be the twist in a modern drama if the Christian turned out to be the good guy. But that's because the pendulum swings, and there's all sorts of different and interesting reasons why that is the case. But you note here that they don't go to much effort to explain the reason that Tavius is generally a force for good in this is because he's a Christian. Although he is now here plotting to kill the Emperor Nero with the lyre player, the player of the lyre, Maximus Battalion, as he thinks, is this homicidal musical assassin. I have to say, looking at what Maximus Battalion looked like in episode 1, a rather frayed and ancient Bart Allison, Nero would have had to have stood very still for a very long time in order to be taken out. He's hardly a crack. It's hardly Day of the Jackal, really, is it? It's sort of Day of the Sloth. He's playing the comedy there, Michael Peake. Hartnell looks great, doesn't he? They all look fantastic in their Roman garb. Would-be murderer. Now, there's a line in that I've got a feeling I know what line Josh is going to choose, and I might have talked through it. I don't think I have. Now the other thing about Derek Francis is that when you get a look at a picture of him, you won't possibly recognise him, because if you know him from Doctor Who, as I did for years, I imagined him. I know he wouldn't have been wearing, the garland that he's got on his head or whatever it is, but the crowd. But I imagined him with hair, even though that's Roman hair. But actually, he's a bald man, Derek Francis, or he's got the hair on the side of the head, but he's a bald man on top. So whenever you see him in anything else, he's got no hair on the top of his head, and it takes you. It's I think when you catch the sort of owl-like nose that you go, that's Derek Francis, and he actually died the day before, a couple of days before his last TV appearance, and he recorded it. He was playing a lead part in a thing called, I think, Winter Sunset, and he died on the. Was it like the 27th of March, 84, and it was broadcast on the 29th, and I think his character died in that. But I didn't register that at the time, because that was 1984. So I might have chanced that, because it was in the papers, but I didn't. So and I usually sort of lucked out with reading I'd come across such stories and put them in my mental data bank, but I didn't with him. Do I love this? Yes, I love. That's very, very funnily done. The way that the Doctor is in charge of, accidentally sets off the fire of Rome. He sets off the inferno. Now, and there's an impressive amount of fire in this episode in the studio. Now, a lot of fire sequences would be done on film because it's easier to control. And, there's no starting and stopping. And, Derek Francis rather bravely wanders around the studio with this, this thing on fire. And this is quite unusual because having an uncontrollable and dangerous if fire can be a substance during a drama was you'd usually get a lot of this stuff done on film, and indeed the starting of the fire, that ingenious thing of it, the sun going through the doctor's glasses, is done on film. But look, that's still smouldering. Well, it's more than smouldering away there; it's burning. You'll be getting some of that alligator treatment. He's brilliant. They are so good. Look at Maureen O'Brien. She's annoyed at having been grabbed by the arm. She's acting away brilliantly, and she's great look. And I'm really taken with this corridor because I think it's fantastic. It goes all the way back. And again, he's wandering around it. You could see I bet the studio manager's there at the back going, if one more piece of burning paper falls on the floor. I mean, do you think as soon as they go off here, there's about 3 people with fire extinguishers? But anyway, there's a lot of fire in this episode. And it's one of those historical event is done by the Doctor now. We know the Doctor did the Great Fire of London. Now, they can be fun little grace notes. Doctor Who was responsible for the Mary... Okay. Oh, she's lovely. Doctor Who is responsible for the Great Fire of London. Doctor Who is responsible for the we solve the mystery of the Mary Celeste because of Doctor Who. And it's quite fun when we have those references to an historical event being caused by the Doctor. That's a brilliant shot. That's such a simple shot, but just having it shot from underneath gives it a bit of height. It's not a set that we've seen before, or if it is, we haven't seen it from that angle. And I love that. One of the things I love about television at this time, it's not just that you had to write a story or have an episode, it's that you had to set it within a certain amount of sets, and you had to sort of go, I need a scene where this happens, and which set can I make it happen in, or how can I suggest that with the resources that I've got available in this space with these materials. And it might be that, I'd like to use that set, but that set was in the last episode, and we don't. Is that a wipe? Was that a wipe? Hang on, we've just entered the Empire Strikes Back. Flash Gordon, Star Trek. That was a wipe. You don't get many wipes in early Doctor Who. Wonder why they did a wipe. That was a wipe, wasn't it? I'm not imagining one. There's nobody here. I'm talking to you. That's a very unusual way of shifting the scene, and I wonder why we didn't have more of that kind of thing. I don't think I imagined that. But yes, I love the sort of logistical element of making television at this point. And I'm sure it's the same with modern television, but it manifests itself in different ways. But I love the way you can sometimes spot and go, I can see what they've done there. They've done that at the back of that set and made use of that space, or they've turned that camera around, or they've used those 2 extras to do that when they were doing that. The marshalling of resources in order to tell the story in an efficient way, or a clever way, or an inventive way, or whatever. Is really nice. The lighting here is very good as well. He's got a great face, hasn't he, Michael Peake? But yes, the Doctor, the Doctor, causing history. He's so good. Well, look at the mad gleam in his eyes. And, this isn't just an actor being, a colourful character. The sort of bonkers Roman emperor thing is a thing. Nero was a Fruit Loop. I think Christopher Biggins plays him, I Claudius. And so, the real sort of slightly unhinged thing that Derek Francis is doing is great fun, but it's suitable for the material. We need the character to be like that. There's in history we're aware that Nero was a bit barking. I love to. We need to have a Caligula in Doctor Who at some point. He would be a great Doctor Who villain. Although I was first introduced to Caligula in Judge Dredd, where there was Judge Caligula, and they told essentially the same story. Although as a youth I pronounced it Caligula. I've done a whole podcast on things I mispronounced. I didn't use that as an example. But then of course, yes, there's I Claudius. Actually, I think there's references to I Claudius in some of the documentaries on the DVD, which is quite nice. But if you've not seen I Claudius, and you're enjoying your little sojourn to Rome, do I Claudius if you like studio-bound videotape drama full of marvellous actors being brilliant characters. Brian Blessed, oh my goodness, such a good performance. And John Hurt, Sian Phillips, Derek Jacobi. Oh, and all this, and everyone pops up. Professor Crimpton from the War Machines, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the pirate captain, the Time Lord from Genesis of the Daleks, they're all in it. So that's the death of Sevcheria, and that was pretty grim and done with fire in the studio, no filming. And Sevcheria, if you've noticed, he's gone from being the slave trader to the guy who's ordering around the Roman soldiers. But yeah, he sort of gets his death there. They've cut back to at least emphasise that, so it's not as ignominious as it might have been. And there we go. There's the close-up with a beautiful fire flickering on the face of Michael Peake there. And a little close-up of him clutching his cross to go, that's the explanation. He's never really explained. That's the explanation as to why he's helpful and good, and also organising an assassination. Christopher Barry, I know, was not happy about the fire in Rome. I think that's a great shot, lovely piece of economy. That just the silhouette with the flickering flames on the mountain. I think that's actually rather beautiful, and I love this dark nighttime lighting, and some of the flickering flame lighting we had earlier as well. Love that on Michael Peake's face on his final shot. And we get some stock footage, which I can sort of see. Christopher Barry might not have been wild about, but it was, if you wanted big burning buildings, you went to a library and got stuff. But obviously there's no footage of Rome itself burning, so probably if you look closely, you'd go, that's slightly more modern architecture. But I think it gets away with it, and it uses a mixture of different things. That silhouette hill shot, and then I think there's a bit coming up where Nero has the flames sort of superimposed in front of him, and then you get the stock footage, and that's what you have to do. You have to use a few different methods to suggest the bigger picture, and it's the combination of them rather than the success of any one individual. I love that. I think that's brilliant. That's a great shot. And here's the stock footage, which is probably a cottage burning in 1934, which is it's not, but there that's quite effective, I think. There's the cottage again, or whatever it is. Does that look like it'd been reversed and played? Anyway, yeah, that does look a bit like the aftermath of the Blitz, but there we go. But that's only because I think we're kind of attuned to that, and we know that it's stock footage. So I have missed the line that I think Josh will choose. I was talking through it, and and again, the back of that set is great. There's real depth to it. And he's going to say, "Oh, is this how they hit me over the head?" Yeah, great. Oops, I've been. I'll keep my own counsel there, acting from Jacqueline Hill. The line is, there's a friend of mine, he smells trouble, but he dives in and he usually finds a way. I like that. He dives in and he usually finds a way. It's sometimes good advice. I think, as a comic, I think I might have prospered more in certain circumstances if I just dived in and found a way rather than been cautious. Because if you're cautious, if things are looking like they're going to be tough and you're cautious anyway, the toughness still comes. Whereas if you sort of just throw caution to the wind and just have a bash, I think sometimes it's it's and with acting as well. Sometimes I think you know if you're a little bit self-conscious. And I have only talked about acting and comedy because they're you know what tend to be the situations where I would you know dive in and usually find a way. And I think when you do that, you might be better off. So I think it's a good philosophy, and it's a great description of Doctor Who, of the Doctor, of the character. So I think that might be what Josh chooses, and it is a lovely line. There's some great lines in this. You know, there is a lot of fantastic wordplay that I've occasionally talked over and allowed the farce to flourish. There's part of me when just before the Doctor and Vicky get back, which we're seeing here, when Ian and Barbara are sort of hitting each other with pillows and pushing each other about, that part of me does go, oh, please start having sex. And I don't mean that in a pervy way. I just love them. And they're such good fun and friends that I want them to fall into bed with each other. Now, there's part of me also that goes, oh yeah, but you don't want to ruin it, because you know that when it rears its head, it can complicate things. But I don't think it would with Ian and Barbara. And as I say, I don't mean this in a pervy way at all. I don't write. Is it called shipping? No, /fiction. I don't know. I honestly don't. That's not my deal. But I just want Ian and Barbara to get married. And also, yeah, go on, kiss her, Ian. Kiss her hard on the mouth. Oh yes. Oh. Oh, I love them. And do you know what I love about this? It's utterly charming. And I think that's been the delight. And I've only sort of realised that through looking and seeing how younger people are enjoying 60s Doctor Who, which I would never have imagined. This is a beautiful model shot, isn't it? And I sort of sometimes think of all the hard work that you know goes into a model shot that's on screen for no seconds at all. Though actually this one's actually, they're lingering on this for quite a while. But I do love a model shot. And you think of all the meticulous little bits and detail to go on for something that's there and gone, or in that case, there and there and there and, or should we go? And actually, I'm not used to the ending of this because for ages I had the UK Gold version, which sort of pauses when they go off and get changed, and it doesn't have the cliffhanger. So I've probably seen the cliffhanger at the end of the Romans only probably 2 or 3 times in my life. Yeah, which is quite low for me in the bits of Doctor Who that I've seen, Snakes, because I've probably seen the Romans itself. That's where it ended. And it had the horrible stand-in sort of computer type static slide caption computer things that UK Gold or whoever it was put on to close the episode because they didn't have the lead into the next one or whatever. So this is the lead into the next episode, the Web Planet. So I'm not really used to this and that horrible sort of sound that's quite discombobulating. We're being to what? Oh, look at his face. He's such a good facial actor. To what? Oh, and then the next episode caption tells us to what? To the Web Planet. The guest cast is sort of done in order of appearance, which is why Derek Francis is near the bottom. There's a whole podcast. Oh, I might have done it already on, when what order the cast list goes in, which probably is only of interest to me. Anyway, that was great. So I hadn't finished what I was saying. And I'm aware that I say the young people a lot, but it's when you sort of hang around on Twitter and social media and you look at what creative people are doing and people who are sometimes people discovering Doctor Who, and you're seeing people much younger than you talking about these old episodes that I've chatted to with my mates about over the years. But when I see younger people doing it, one of the things that other people's perspectives are very helpful and very useful. And I think you always learn from other people's perspectives, and our instinct is often to dismiss them because we know what we've got in our head and we're very set in our ways, and none of us like to change and certainly change our opinions or have our opinions challenged, even benignly, And I've always looked at sort of old Who as, yes, it's educational, it's weird. I think that was my thing when I did Running Through Corridors. I thought, the 60s, the Hartnell era in particular, is as weird as Doctor Who ever gets, and I thought that was quite a good angle to take with it, and I enjoyed looking at it from that perspective, and how the show develops like that, and how strange it is, and then the historicals which are educational, and then gradually, because of Dennis Spooner, have that sort of the wittiness that goes into them before they then go into a slightly different kind of comedy, but the wonderful comedy of Donald Cotton, which is a bit more sophisticated yet utterly daft. It's an odd mix of sort of highbrow and very lowbrow, but I don't think I'd realised until I saw sort of younger people falling in love with Ian and Barbara and reveling in the sort of dynamic of those early crews. I think particularly this quartet, because I think Susan's at her best when she's a bit strange and unearthly and a bit weird, whereas Vicky is such a delightful adventurer, and Maureen O'Brien is so good at being sort of perky and charming. And that charming is the word. This is what I'm beginning to learn, and how I'm beginning to view a lot of these 60s stories on sort of revisiting them now, is how charming the series is at this point. And I'm charmed by the characters and by the chemistry between them. And yes, Ian is the square-jawed hero. And yes, Barbara is the intelligent history teacher who, occasionally has to tell the Doctor off and be the sort of conscience of the piece. And yes, the Doctor is the, crabby but eccentric and occasionally hooting with laughter, sort of crazy eccentric adventurer. And Vicky is this sort of wide-eyed, innocent, young adventurer. But there's a lovely, charming dynamic between them, and I sort of I want to come on adventures with them, and the fact that you see them there preserved as they are, and and Hartnell's no longer with us, nor is Jacqueline Hill, and William Russell is now 98, and there's and I love them, I love him now, and Maureen is a very nice woman, and I'm lucky enough to know her a little. We exchange emails every now and again, and she's terrific, very intelligent woman, and I like her a lot. She's a smart cookie, and she's good fun, and yeah, I like her a lot. And it's but seeing them preserved at that time, I love that gang, which I've always liked Doctor Who, but I think that's a relatively new development for me. And and that is partially through seeing, people 10, 15, 20 years younger than me be utterly charmed by these, what could be, fusty old relics from the past, slightly different acting styles, black and white, slower pace of adventures. But they've been charmed, and they've been captured, and they've been delighted, and they've been beguiled by the sheer sort of fun and verve and enjoyment. It's a different, characters are different in those days. Nowadays, characters sort of have to wear their inner trauma on their sleeve. They have to have an inner struggle or a turmoil, or to be overcoming something, or and I understand that. And there's a place for sort of more sophistication, if you like, in delving into the psyches of our heroes. But that's not the only way to do things, and it doesn't mean that the way they did things in those days was bad or worse, and in fact, actually, it would be nice to have a hero who isn't overly complicated, and who isn't, navel gazing or troubled or broken or sad, or the victim of their own flaws or of society's flaws or whatever. There's something about the joyful escapism of, and Doctor Who has to be joyful escapism. Yes, it can, make political points and be angry and powerful and satirical and dark and spooky, but it also, it's escapism and adventure and fun. And when I want to talk about Doctor Who to other people, I want to talk about it with a big, broad, stupid smile on my face. Because although it terrified me as a kid, although it excited me, although the adventures got me going and guessing and wide-eyed and scared, it was never not fun. Do you know what I mean? And this hobby, this mad hobby of ours, should never not be fun, because the minute a hobby stops being fun is, well, you're Victor Kennedy, aren't you? You're the guy who comes and sucks the joy out of it for everybody. And I hadn't realised, I think, just how much fun one could have with the Hartnell gang. I watched The Time Meddler recently, which is a story I was always sort of like, yeah, it's fine, but it's not that funny. And the supporting characters are all a bit boring. So it's only really, the TARDIS crew and Peter Butterworth, and that's a big ask for 4 episodes. And I watched it and also because it's quite a popular one, and because it always does better than The Crusade, which I think is a much better script, and it's deadly serious and written in iambic pentameter, and it's got Shakespearean actors in it. Toby. And I do love The Crusade, but we'll talk about that some other time. But I watched The Time Meddler with a load of fans at the BFI for the launch of the season 2 box set, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved being in a room with loads of people, some older than me, some even older and crustier than I, but also some younger fans, some of whom had never seen it before, some of whom had and loved it already, and just being with that cross-generational. Emily Cook was there, Beth Axford was there, loads of young people. And, well, one, I felt part of a community, and 2, I just, being in that room where there was so much joy and so much love for these, these people who are either very old or now dead, was what a wonderful and charming thing, that something that was made in no more spectacular or special a way than any other television at the time, and in fact under sometimes more difficult circumstances, that has done that and continues to do that. And I love that, and I love how charming. And I think The Romans, because it's a comedy, has the charm coming out of its ears a bit more than some of the sci-fi stories which have to do some other things. And of course, because it's Doctor Who's first attempt at sort of, quite a large ratio of comedy to drama, it's not going to be to everybody's taste, because it sort of has to go as far as Doctor Who really ever does with comedy. But again, like the Caves of Androzani that I did last time, it would be boring if Doctor Who was all like the Caves of Androzani. And actually, Doctor Who is not the Caves of Androzani, but the Caves of Androzani can exist and shine because it is within the context of Doctor Who, and it's got enough of Doctor Who about it that it's a particularly dark and grim and gritty Doctor Who. That means it's quite a special Doctor Who, because it, for once, does some of those things that Doctor Who doesn't normally do. But the rest of Doctor Who has to exist for it to shine like that. And I'd say it's the same with the Romans. You wouldn't want every week Doctor Who to be a ridiculous farce that messes about with history and has the characters literally doing the farcy stuff of, running past each other in the, running one of them running out of the action as the other runs in and they've just missed each other. But the fact that there is a Doctor Who story where that happens and the fact that it's the Romans that happens means the Romans is bloody great. And I love the fact that you have that thing that they have that Ian and Barbara have an adventure that the Doctor and Vicky haven't got a clue about. I love all of that. So I've really enjoyed watching the Romans. I found episode 3 a bit more difficult, but I think I'd again got into my head, it's the slightly long episode. So oddly, I had less to say for episode 3 than I just have. And I didn't even really finish my points about how I feel about the Doctor meddling in history. There's part of me that loves it, because you go, I quite like it that our silly time traveller, will. And I love it with the Romans, because he sort of accidentally, sort of almost incidentally sets the fire, and it's a bit of a sort of mistake. I prefer that to, the oncoming storm, the guy who's the stuff of legend. I don't buy that, because I don't feel like the stuff of legend. So, but I do feel like somebody who bumbles away and tries to succeed, even sometimes through incompetence, but with a, diving in and usually finding a way. I can identify with that in a way that I can't identify with being, an all-powerful, sad, sad strider through time, who has been involved with all of the key events in world history. So I have a complicated relationship with the Doctor being responsible for historical events, and I think my preference is when it's a funny little grace note, or even an accident. Rather than if it's a sign that the Doctor is this powerful steerer of key events in time. I prefer that he's a bit of a pesky meddler who accidentally knocks stone. I'd be quite happy if he actually caught his elbow on the corner of one of the Stonehenge stones and knocked the rest of them over, than if he was there whipping the stone beasts into shape at the dawn of time. So look, I think Josh will choose for episode 4. So now I'm playing the game, you see. I think he's going to choose the line, I have a friend called the Doctor, he looks for trouble, he dives in and usually finds a way. And if that is correct, I have no idea if he's chosen that or not, and I'm going to feel like an idiot if he hasn't. Because as soon as I thought about this episode and I thought of that line, I thought, he said he's choosing a line. That's got to be the line. And the scene, which is his overall thing, which is his favourite thing, it's either going to be the Doctor playing the lyre, but he's already kind of half chosen that because he chose the line, he's not that good. Or it's going to be, it might be the accidental setting fire of Rome, which I think is lovely. And I think it's great that, we have a great historical event as a bit of a joke in this very silly story. But it fits tonally. It's perfect. And again, well done for having so much fire in the studio and pulling it off. But my favourite scene is the death of Tigellinus. And I'd feel daft if I didn't choose that. And again, as I said last time, I have a very complex relationship with that because it sort of goes against a lot of my instincts. But I've been thinking about this because I was thinking when I was sort of tying myself up in knots about whether, we can be funny about what is essentially an attempted sexual assault. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. In the same way, and I mentioned, oh, yes, but I've, never been the victim of such a thing, so therefore, what about people? But, I mean, there are things that cause me great emotional distress, that I can still laugh at somebody doing a joke about if it's a good enough joke and if it's in a disarming context. There's nothing sort of glib or reveling or titillating or exploitative about any of the, and I use very inverted commas, sexual content in the Romans. It's, even though the comedy is about a man chasing a woman, it's farce. We're never supposed to take it too seriously. We know that he's never going to get to the point where he gets her alone in his bedroom. Do you know what I mean? Part of the knowledge of that comedy form is that it's never going to happen. And it's sort of guessing how she's going to get out of it, and who's going to burst in just before. It's the whole thing about frustrated desire. The comedy comes from us watching the constant scuppering of the plans of the predator, if you like. And also, it's farce. It's heightened. It's silly. And there are, as I say, there are very, very serious things that make me cry when I think about them, or very upset when I remember them or contemplate them. That if a good comic does in a clever or instructive or just a funny way, where I think it would ill behove me to go, that's a good joke. But Joe Lycett did a joke recently when I saw him, when he talked about throwing a croissant across the room and saying it was like a boomerang with psoriasis. He got a massive laugh. And psoriasis is something I've been hospitalized with and had head to foot, and it causes me great distress. And I've seen pictures of myself with it, and when I've had it very badly, it's been like an icicle through my soul to have a look at myself and the detritus that cascades from my face and my head, and it makes me ashamed and it's physically painful. But I think it would. I think to then see a comedian do a joke about it where it's not really about it, I could easily, dampen the mood and go, well, I think you'll find that I have psoriasis and it's very, very serious. Or I could go, well, that's just a joke, and he's not using... And people are very thoughtless, and people do say thoughtless things about a skin condition when you have a very bad one all of the time, and it's grating, it's horrible. And is that facilitated by sometimes comedians being glib about it? Yeah, maybe, but I think that's a price worth paying for there being more jokes in the world myself, because jokes are generally nice and good, and most comedians are just trying to put a smile on your face, and I think that's all the Romans is trying to do. So anyway, the Doctor's line, Ian's line about the Doctor is going to be my choice for episode 4, because I'm playing by Josh's rules. The poisoning of Tigellinus is going to be the bonus thing, and if they choose both of those things, I will have snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. So the chances of it happening, it's unlikely to happen, isn't it? I'm going to miss now, like Vicky missed Barbara in the corridors of Rome. So, Josh Snares, episode 4.
When I was looking at episode 4, I wasn't sure if I was going to do this entire scene or just an individual line, because there's just so many good lines in it. But it's the scene where the Doctor obviously knows that he's going to be fed to the lions. So he says the amazing line, "Yes, well, I promise you, I shall try to make it a roaring success." I love a stupid pun, and I love endless puns in a row, but that one's my ultimate favourite in that scene.
Oh, well, there we are. I was certain they were going to choose the line about the Doctor specialising in trouble, and they've gone for a silly, terrible, but great pun. Well, there we go. Well, so much for victory from the jaws of defeat. I didn't even get anywhere near... I think I'd been gobbled up. I think I'm in the digestive tract of defeat. I didn't stay long enough in the jaws. So it doesn't really matter what scene he chooses, but let's just see, because them's the rules, and somebody else's insight is always interesting. So is Josh, who's done a video and is in front of some beautiful trees, and is looking and has a wonderful lustrous head of hair. I'm very envious where I have none. Josh has I would say my share, and is looking splendid.
So for my 5th and final moment, I've decided to choose my all-time favourite scene from this story, which is where the Doctor pretends to play the liar. Now, you may think I'm cheating because I kind of said episode 3 was that one, but you know what? I don't care. I can do whatever I like. You don't make the rules, Toby. I make the rules. But, when I think about the story, it's the first thing I think about. And it's one of those moments where it really cemented, oh no, this is my favourite era.
Josh, you are perfectly entitled to make the rules. I'm resigned to losing, so I may as well lose your way rather than mine, because what I also like about the very flimsy premise of this podcast is that although it's largely me talking, which is largely a practical decision, is that everybody that comes in interprets the remit their way, and they each have their own ways of expressing their love for Doctor Who, and then in turn their love for the particular Doctor Who that they have chosen. And I like that because it opens up different perspectives. And as I say, I think it's very important in life. I think, I've just turned 49, and I am so resistant to things that are new. just out of instinct, when I see younger people, and it's partially because I've got kids, so when they express an opinion, it automatically grates against my brain, because it's like, you don't even know how to make a cup of coffee. Why are you telling me about world politics? But actually, then you have I don't say that. You have long conversations with them, and you go, oh yeah, my son may be, half my age, less than half, more than half my age. But that's no reason why for him not to know more about something than I do, because he's perfectly capable of reading and researching, and I don't know everything. In fact, there's loads I know absolutely nothing about. But you're sort of, we're wired to sort of go, yes, but we're older, so we know more, because they don't know some things. Now, there's certain life lessons that they certainly don't know, and I sometimes have to wearily impart, or wearily bite my tongue and think, well, no point me imparting that now, because you'll only get offended, but I'll just wait for you to discover that, and I'll catch you when you fall. But it's a threat as a 48, 49-year-old man, especially one that has had reason to feel slightly less relevant in the past couple of years. I mean, I essentially got, I've had a couple of intimations in my work life of kind of, yeah, you won't be used for that. You're a bit over the hill. You're not very relevant or whatever. And you sort of go, oh God, and so it's, you have to be very careful, because one way to combat that is to go, well, I'm feeling irrelevant because of all these young people who don't know anything. God, the world's going to be terrible with them in charge because they don't know things that I know. And the other way of turning that around is to go, no, they're understanding the world in a way that you don't, because they've got their perspective, and it's the world that is going to be created around them, because they're the ones that are creating the world now. And you can either live in it and try and understand it and not be threatened by it, or you can just sit there being pissed off and grumpy and sometimes willfully not understanding. So it was actually a Doctor Who director. It was John Gorrie who directed The Keys of Marinus, because I think sometimes when I interview people who worked in old Doctor Who, my temptation is to go, and of course it was marvellous in those days, wasn't it? You had time to rehearse, and it was the Acton Hilton, and you got proper performances. And he said, I don't do that thing of going, things were better then and things are rubbish now. He said things change, and they change just inevitably and because of the passage of time, and not one is not necessarily better than the other. It's just different. And I always try and learn from the new things and the things coming through. And I thought that was really instructive. And I think you're happier if you go, well, look, there's loads of things going on in the sort of culture wars and the political sphere at the moment that baffle me. But they baffle me because they're new, or because I don't quite understand, or I haven't quite worked them out yet. But that's okay. That doesn't have to be a threat. One doesn't have to be threatened by something that one doesn't understand, in the same way that one doesn't have to be threatened by young people coming in and interpreting Doctor Who in their way, or expressing their love for Doctor Who in their way, or doing that. You benefit from things that are different, or things that change your mind about a certain thing, or give you a new perspective. As I say, this charming element of the Hartnell era, and Josh says it's his favourite era of the show. I think that's absolutely lovely, and I take no sense of ownership of it, because we all like Doctor Who in our different ways, and it's quite helpful, because I think it is easy to be grumpy and to be cross and to be intransigent and to go, well, I don't like that, because it's not what I'm used to, and what I'm not used to then makes me feel threatened about where my place is. And it might just be we're in a different place and getting different stimuli, but that doesn't mean they have to be worse. Don't think so anyway. I went off on one a bit there. All on the back of one of the silliest Doctor Who stories of all time that has no pretense to be anything other than loopy entertainment. I think the writer Dennis Spooner went, I'm going to see how far I can push this for a laugh, and does. And I wouldn't want all Doctor Who to be like the Romans. But because we have all of Doctor Who, it means that the Romans, in its own term, shines. It burns like an inferno.
Well, that's it. That's all my 5 moments. Thank you so much for inviting me, Toby, and I hope this podcast will be a roaring success. Okay, I'll stop now. And just like Rome, how it burnt to the ground, so did the BBC's archives. If you want to know more about how certain episodes came back, please watch my Missing Episodes series where I talk about how these episodes returned to the archive. Sometimes the story behind the episodes are a little bit more interesting than the plot themselves. Thank you yet again, Toby, for involving me in this podcast. I feel so honoured to be involved with anything attached to your name.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Josh Snares, on Twitter at Josh_Snares, and on YouTube at youtube.com/Josh Snares. That's where all those brilliant videos are. I'm grateful to Josh and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Andy Larson, Pete Lambert, Pete Lack, Hendrik Korzeniowski, Andy Kitching, Matthew Kilburn, William Keith, Judith Jackson, Andrew Jolly, Robert Jewell, Paul Ingerson, Tom Hunter-Watts, David Hughes, Darren Howard, Matthew Hooliston, Sam Hollingsworth, Andrew Hodson, Simon Hodges, Stephen Hill, Matthew Herbert, Legion Henderson, Paul Hayes, Ronald Hayden, Duncan Harvey, Steve Hatcher, Susan Harrison, Luke Hannington, John Handcock, William Haynes, Aaron Gullius, and Thomas Gurrier. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Well, regular listeners will know what happens next. There's a lengthy and stumbly and genuinely humble, but it probably sounds like faux humility, because that's what this sort of stuff often comes across as. And I suppose in a way it probably is, because if it was real humility, I would be too humble to do what I'm about to do, which is to point you in the direction of patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. It is the way things are done these days, is what I keep telling myself. And to be fair, other people tell me. And, perhaps I should contextualize the cap-in-hand nature of this monologue with, an acknowledgement that this is what people have told me to do. But I'm doing it of my own free will. Anyway, patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. Where you get bonus releases, you get advance releases, you get exclusive material, you get pictures of my dog, all for £3 a month. Everything is available at the lowest tier. There are higher tiers and other but quite trivial inducements up top, but all of the actual specifically recorded material, no content, as the blurgy word is these days, is held back for anybody. So £3 a month, and you can actually get 10% off that and every other tier if you sign up for a year in one go. If you can't do the monthly subscription, and I totally understand that, there's a one-off payment option at ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. But what costs you nothing is 5 stars and a few lines of review on iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. That really, really helps, because it makes other people aware of these, and the more people listen to this, the more it justifies the time spent on them. And, it's nice if you make something if people hear it. I'm on social media at Toby Hadoke, on Twitter. These podcasts have their own feed at Hadoke Podcasts, and my day job is as a stand-up comedian, which is something I was doing long before I wandered into this Doctor Who I was going to say Doctor Who malarkey, but my comedy club's called Excess Malarkey. So yeah, I went from Excess Malarkey to Doctor Who malarkey. It's all a bit of a malarkey. And yes, my comedy club is Excess Malarkey in Manchester, which is on every Tuesday night and has its own Twitter feed at Excess Malarkey. It's good fun. Now, I'm aware that I chose a line that I don't think I ever got right in the course of the podcast, did I? So I kept going, it's that one about diving in and finding a way. The line is, I've got a friend who specialises in trouble. He dives in and usually finds a way. And it continues, I think I'll take a leaf out of his book for once. Come on. Yeah, that's the line. I kept going, I want to choose that line about the doctor trouble finding... but I think it's worth repeating properly in a podcast where that line is the subject of a lot of discussion. But what a great embodiment of the Doctor's character that is. He specialises in trouble, dives in, and usually finds a way. I think there's something to be said for diving in and usually finding a way. I'm trying to be less reticent about, getting things done, because the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. So to die, I think Ian Chesterton and Dennis Spooner said it right all that time ago. And because, of course, when the Doctor dives in, nothing could possibly go wrong. Anyway, The Romans is available on the Season 2 box set Blu-ray release from the BBC, which, as I record this, has just been hitting people's shelves. And it has lots of lovely extras. It's been beautifully restored, and with apologetic and as humble as my request for money about 3 minutes ago. The ubiquitous Blu-ray presenter Hadoke pops up once again, but I hope I earn my place on the set with a lovely documentary called Looking for David, in which we discover much about the script editor and very important figure in Doctor Who's history, David Whittaker. And I can say it's a good film, irrespective of whether I'm in it or not, because it's made by Chris Chapman, who makes brilliant films for the Blu-ray range. If you think I'm ubiquitous, he's all over the place, but rightly so. He makes really good shows, and does so with a lot of love and a lot of doggedness, and very good quality cameras and crew. I'm really chuffed with how Looking for David turned out. So I hope you get a chance to see it and to enjoy the Blu-ray goodness of Doctor Who Season 2, which is a jolly affair. Although I have been exchanging texts with my friend Johnny Camden, who's been going, I'm struggling with the Web Planet. I said, where are you on it? He said, I'm about to do the episode Escape to Danger. I was like, you've only done 2 episodes. And he was like, oh God. So somebody has chosen the Web Planet, but they haven't recorded their contribution. That will be a very interesting one for Happy Times and Places, not because I'm suggesting anything about its quality, although I have to admit I have found it a bit of a struggle, but more because it's also one I haven't seen since I did it for Running Through Corridors. So that's over a decade, and I hadn't watched it much prior to that. I didn't think I'd watched it since the DVD came out. So I look forward to do that. So I must remind the person who agreed about 2 years ago to do that. But that's another story. So I will see you on the Web Planet probably at some time in the far future. But I've got an inkling where we're going to come a little bit more up to date, perhaps with a bit of New Who on the next Happy Times and Places. So hold your breath until then. No, don't hold your breath until then, but that's a clue. But also, I'm aware that we live in very litigious times. If you hold your breath until then, you will die. So don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. But there's a very ham-fistedly placed clue as to. But actually, things quite often happen with the release schedule, so it might not even be. I used to throw ahead to the story coming next, and then I got either cold feet about one particular release, or I decided to jazz up the order a little bit, or I just forgot, and so I stopped throwing forward, because do as little as you possibly can to indicate what's coming next, in case for some reason it isn't, because as we know, things can turn into a bit of a disaster or catch fire